Thanks for that generous introduction. So what I decided I'd talk about today is just a few of the sort of topics that really resonate with a lot of the CEOs and founders that I mentor. I've been very privileged over the last 4 or 5 years where I've worked with around 60 startup founders across Southeast Asia. And I found these 3 particular topics resonate really well with them as they think about their leadership journey. So the first thing I just wanted to share was that when you're a leader, it's particularly useful to think about your life journey as a critical part of your leadership journey. And that's pretty obvious enough when you think about when you're younger, you see your parents, you learn how to be a little bit of a leader at school, maybe you've got a captain of a class, or you see other leaders at school, then you get to university, maybe the first job. But interestingly, a lot of people then stop on the journey of being, I suppose, deliberate in observing leaders. I really encourage CEOs to sort of maintain this student of leadership concept throughout their whole career. Now, I'm a little bit odd, so when I turn back the clock to my first job when I was in my early 20s, I decided I really wanted to become a student of leadership, and I knew I needed to grow and there was lots to learn. So what I did is I created an Excel spreadsheet, and for the next 15 years, every boss that I worked for, I would put, these are the characteristics that impressed me, that impacted me, that motivated me. And then I'd put on the right-hand side those characteristics or behaviors that actually didn't work for me. And over time, I just accumulated and identified behaviors that really great leaders execute. Now, you need to be able to confidently and authentically copy those behaviors. And sometimes, you can't copy a behavior because it's just not authentically you. So it's really important on your journey to observe other leaders and think about, firstly, how they impacted you, how they made you feel, and whether in fact there's something there that you've learned that you could use in your own leadership behaviors. So again, the first message I'd challenge people to think about is think about your leadership journey and remaining a student of leadership. Continue to observe, reflect, and evolve your own leadership. So that would be concept number 1 I would suggest you all. The next thing I wanted to talk about were leadership characteristics. And this is something that a list that I've created over, 20 years. And it's characteristics that I see great leaders execute. And so let me just walk through a number of those. So the first one is a leader is a person of hope. So I love action movies. So one of my favorite action movies is Gladiator. The first Gladiator with Russell Crowe, and I think he was Maximus Aurelius. And as a general in battle, he would always be out front. Same thing with Braveheart, with Mel Gibson, right out front. And that's what great leaders do. They're out front. People follow you as leaders. It's the same thing in business. When you think about your business today, people are in the business because of you. Just about anyone can get another job elsewhere for at least the same pay. So they're in a business because of you, particularly in terms of startups. So it doesn't mean you can't dip and have a bad day, but you also need to remain motivated and inspire people going forward. So the first thing would be a leader is a person of hope. The second thing is a leader is a simplifier. So a lot of the times your teams will come to you and they'll just tell you this long story. And your role as a leader is to listen to them, reflect on it, and then provide them a really simple summary of what you're hearing and ideally the root cause. Now, one of the things that we have to be careful of is that we don't oversimplify the solution, because a lot of times the solution is a lot more complex than we would expect. So the third area that I just wanted to share with you is that leaders, particularly founders, have this burning ambition and drive. And they have a clear purpose in what they do. And the power of a purpose is that helps to drive you and make you more resilient. It helps you overcome, it motivates you to overcome those hurdles. Without a passion and drive and that purpose, it's very hard to be a leader. Also, people join a company because of the business's purpose. So really critical that as a founder and a CEO, that you're very clear on the purpose of the company. The fourth point is that a leader must have or must be an avid learner. They must be curious. Now, I think curious is probably one of the most overused words of the last 2 or 3 years, but that's okay. It's a very appropriate word. Leaders have to be curious. They have to be thoughtful. And importantly, they need to reinvent themselves. Early on in a startup, when the team is small, there might be 3 or 4 or 5 people, you're all engineers, you're all techies, you're all very focused on creating a product. And it's inspiring, you're all working together, you're all very similar, which is great fun. As the business grows, your team diversifies. You have different skill sets. You have diversity in the team in terms of age, experience, as well as functional skills. And so as a leader, you need to reinvent yourself and learn how to manage subject matter experts, even when you're not a subject matter expert. And that's a real journey that I found a lot of founders you need help in understanding. The next point I want to raise is that leaders do not make decisions for others. I'd ask a question for you to reflect on. If someone comes up to you in your cubicle, in your office, and they ask you a question, do you just provide them the answer? Or do you say to them, okay, what do you think the answer is? I think a lot of people would know the story of Pavlov's dog. This goes back a long, long time ago, where Pavlov would ring a bell and give the dogs food. And so they then connected ringing a bell with the food. And then he got to the stage where he'd just ring the bell and the dogs would salivate. He trained them that the bell and the food were connected. You do the same thing with your team. If you provide them a solution every time they come and talk to you, then nothing's going to change. What I'd suggest is a tweak. Just say, hey, great question. What do you think we should do? And if they haven't got an answer, say, hey, come back to me later today and let's have a chat. I really want your view. Now, that doesn't mean you can't disagree with them and say, look, great idea, but maybe this would be a better approach. But you want to train the team that they need to come to you with problems, great, but also ideas of solution. The next one I wanted to stress is great leaders and impactful leaders speak last. Too many times I see leaders, they'll have a meeting with their team and they'll say, this is the problem we're addressing and this is what I think we should do. The second you put a stake in the ground and say, this is my opinion, you're going to change the opinion of other people in the room. Some people will still speak up and say, well, actually, I disagree, Dane. I think we should do that. But you'll have fewer of those. And in some cultures, particularly in Southeast Asia, people are very respectful of the boss and say, yep, great, let's go in your direction, Dane. So I really encourage leaders, please speak first in formulating and identifying the problem. But speak last in terms of providing your opinion. Provide room for other people to speak up. The last concept that I want to talk about is be aware of your leadership shadow. I actually think this is arguably one of the most important leadership characteristics that all leaders should be aware of. If you're a parent, you know this. You know your children are watching you every minute of every day. The same thing happens in business. When you walk in the office, everyone knows whether you're in a good mood or bad mood within 2 minutes. I don't know how they deduce it, but they know what mood you're in almost immediately. They're watching you for cues. So leadership shadow, another way of thinking about it is effectively positional power. It's a CEO. So I've been in organizations with hundreds of thousands of people. And in fact, I was very fortunate. My last job, I was a CEO of 200,000 people. So I knew that when I was in a room, people were watching me constantly. People knew where I was sitting. People knew who I was talking to. People knew when I walked out of the room. People were watching for cues, who I spoke to, whose jokes I laughed with, who I promoted. My calendar sent a message as well. So your leadership shadow is immense. I really encourage leaders, firstly, to be aware of that. You need to be very aware that you're being watched constantly. And as I say in the slide, use it for good, not evil. An example of that is, as a leader, you don't need to yell. I'm very disappointed when I hear that a leader sort of yells at their team. If you just say, I'm disappointed, that's powerful enough given your position. You don't need to yell and scream at your team. And that's using your leadership power for evil if you're raising your voice for your team. Using it for good is recognition. Recognition is a huge part and very powerful in organizations. So I really encourage leaders and CEOs to recognize their team. It could be a high five. It could be congratulations. Hey, take your boyfriend or girlfriend out to lunch tomorrow and we'll pay for it. Might be a promotion, might be a bonus. Recognition works, and that's a critical part that's a critical lever that you can use in terms of leveraging your leadership shadow. Thank you.